welcome to the Twilight Network, the place where we discuss C of D and in all that we can with everything that we know. My name's Liam, Rampant Wombat on my socials, which you can see below. Hope you're doing well. Hope your week's been good. We are coming to you. Let's actually start recording. There we go. We're coming to you from Tyria Notapaneland here in northern Lutruwita, Tasmania. As always, we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and the nations that cared for this land. And this morning, we are turning down the music so I can think. And we are looking once again at Hunter, the Vigil. What is the Vigil in terms of what we're doing? Here, what is the Vigil in terms of what it should kind of play out with in your game? The Vigil is this phrase from Moby Dick. This um, this potent phrase of "Call me Ishmael." That monologue, that early monologue, really captures the heart of what Moby Dick is about, and captures the Vigil. This desire to hunt something for the sake of gaining something from it, for the sake of understanding it, for the sake of killing it. Killing in the name of love, maybe killing for the sake of those around us, to keep people safe. All of that is part of this setup. And Hunter is a game that is really focused on protection, on the reason that you kill. It's if you step out of that reason, if you just kill willy-nilly, you become a monster too. And that's where the slasher chronicle comes in. Also, this coffee cup is amazing. It's got otters on it. Let's camera plus there. Otters, toucan. This sort of stuff, this sort of light stuff, is the juxtaposition that makes Chronicles of Darkness and Hunter games really important. What do you fight for? What do you keep safe? What sort of thing is important to you? And what is going to keep you functioning in the hunt? What is going to keep you going in the hunt? That's kind of it. That's all that matters for Hunter. For Hunter, in the grand scheme of things, that's just what you're looking for. So what we're going to do today is really go through in our little setting that we're building the reasons that a hunter would protect it, our hunters of the Bellefonds conspiracy, and look at reasons to keep that allow the hunters to have respite and to remember what they're fighting for. What are the small moments of delight, like otters on a takeaway coffee cup, that continually pop up for them, that remind them? So, those in chat, hope you're doing well. And let us get up the Hunter book, because that's going to inform a lot of what we're talking about. computer, please. Please, puta. Behave. Now, the Hunter book has a selection of themes. Ex explained versus unknown, sacrifice versus self-preservation, hope versus despair. All these things are perfectly valid to play in your game. However, each game should have its own distinct theme, the distinct thing that the stories consistently reflect. Whatever that may be. In the story that we've been slowly creating through our use of um, the Bellefonte conspiracy, which has this, theme of fighting against power, having a fair go, this hallmark of the Kelly gang, and the Chimera cult, which is really thematically focused around taking advantage of people. When we're looking at the setting and looking at setting theme, what I often like to do is compare the theme of our antagonists, the people that we're following, to that of the uh, antagonists. So, what is that theme? That theme is we don't want to say liberty, that sends the wrong signal. I don't want to do freedom, that's a conservative talking point. Anti we do have we don't have a cat anymore. Thought you were going to come up and say hello. There we go. Say hello to the humans. Hmm? Okay, just say hello to me. The setting has an anti-authoritarian theme. That is, authority is distrusted. Seen to be manipulative. Need mic up? I'll try my best, but I'm at max on all my stuff, Paradox Talks. We will... Alright. We've boosted mic in. I hope that is working for you. Now, where was I going with this? Authorities seem to be manipulative and innately coercive. So in that sort of backdrop, our hunters represent a thanks very much, mate. How's your morning going, Paradox Talks? Um, Hunters represent an organization that is community focused, not profits, or power focused. That's the sort of theme that should envelop this sort of setting and story. The setting that we're going for will develop a character as we work through it, particularly in Tasmania, which has its own character, realistically. It's a good rainy day. It's been a rainy week out here as well. Hope you're staying dry and warm whilst we talk about this sort of stuff. Uh, Setting as character is something that you often hear in creative writing workshops, and it's never talked about well, I find. It's always talked about, give your setting character. Well, great, fantastic. What does that mean? Should I give it a jester's hat and make it dance in the rain? No. Setting as character means that there are maybe two or three key elements that are constantly brought back to life. If you're familiar with the um, TV show Farscape, which aired from 1990 to 2004, I think. Um, the ship of Moya has a very distinct character. She is obliging, she is generous, but she's also a bit cantankerous and a bit frustrated with the nature of the criminals that she is forced to transport. She requires them, she cares about them, but if they weren't there, she'd probably have a better life. You know, you are really disrupting the light sources in the room, Cat. Those sorts of characteristics are very easy to do in something like a living ship like Moya, but how we do it in Hunter and how we do it in Chronicles of Darkness overall is a little different. Now, okay. So, pilot. Um, there is a character called Pilot in Farscape, yes, who is a giant crab man who is very kind. He's he's his own distinct character, and one of the things um, within Farscape is often Pilot and Moya really disagree and really act counter to each other, which is not good when you're, supposed to be this symbiotic being um, that is working together, and then suddenly the the key partner of that starts doing things that are just not helpful, like say starving you to feed their child. It's a bit subpar. If you do want to watch Farscape, which I highly recommend, Amazon Prime has it, and I think you may be able to purchase it from YouTube, but I'm not sure. So, the mood of our setting and the character of our setting need to be reflected in the same ways. Hunter does have some rules for it here in Chapter 6 of Mysterious Places, and we'll bounce back to this eventually. But the mood that we want to go for in northern Tasmania is parochial and proud. Um, this is something that is very Tasmanian, just overall. We are quite parochial, and we are also quite proud of our place in the world. Tassie is beautiful. Tassie is wonderful. Until very recently, it was a very affordable place to live. But as pride has kind of done its part, as has self-disrespect and greed really have played their parts, um, it's changed. It's changed from this sort of parochial, this place where it makes sense to be parochial and proud of who you are, to being just another state of Australia. It's just we don't have a desert. So how are our places going to reinforce these themes? Um, the most important thing for reinforcing of parochial themes is the use of pubs, shopping locations, and oh yeah, Pilot has a complicated relationship with just about everybody on the ship, and it's very funny. Um, yeah, yeah. Oh, glad to hear that, Paradox. Yeah, Taz is a really nice place. Um, so when we're looking at locations for Tassie, some of the big things that really shift and change how they work is how you set up pubs, shopping locations, and the people that watch. So basically, every small town has a pub in Tasmania, and it is you've got two very key elements that go on. You have the pub and the church, and then a school somewhere in the mix. In a lot of small towns, the pub and the church are very close, not just in terms of location, but in terms of patronage. You're gonna have similarities in who visits the pub, in who visits the church, and both of them reinforce the vibe of a town. So, the people that watch are the people that for whom home is unsafe. So make the world around them unsafe. This falls into shopping locations. Pubs and churches have two different vibes. If you, last week we talked a little bit, sorry, last fortnight we talked a little bit about masculine and feminine vibes. Pubs have this masculine blokey vibe. Churches have this old bloke, old lady vibe. Shopping locations tend to have a more feminine vibe. There is an expectation that if you're going shopping, particularly through the day, that you are a woman, particularly, or at least female presenting, particularly in rural towns like where this is set, where we're looking at places like Longford, Perth, um, even Launceston to a certain extent. These northern towns around the South Esk in Tassie all have this very gendered view of the world, which is a little bit odd. Well, I mean, it's normal, but I'm from Hobart, so. So, when a player enters a pub or enters a shopping location, or is just out in public, there should be people around that watch, and you should have those general vibes of suspicion. Now, this is where Australia and America become different. Yeah, exactly, Paradox. Um, Pubs, clubs, all have this, all just do the same thing. They provide food. Same as shopping locations, they just have the different vibes. So when we're looking at these sorts of things, how do people respond? Now this is Australia, not America. So you're not going to get the aggressive actions as much here. You might get a bit of biffo once everybody's 5 pints down, and that's normal. That's good. That's healthy. But when when the hunters walk in, what is the sort of club scene going to be? Rather than everything coming to a stop, they're going to be ignored, but they're going to be watched. If you're used to if you've listened to the Magnus archives, you'll know of this sort of feeling. And Chronicles uses the watch condition, particularly in Promethean and I think Demon, to represent this. It's not that you're not noticed, it's that you have been noticed. You will be noticed, and you will be ignored. It's not that you're unimportant, you're very important. But we don't know how dangerous you are. So behave yourself. It's within those situations that you start to get the feeling of a town. Now, in our setting where we have the Bellefonte conspiracy, a conspiracy that is all about fighting against the Chimera cult, a cult that is all about the manipulation of human DNA to creating something evil. How do we subvert this sort of location? You just make it friendly. And I've been in plenty of pubs around Tassie where you can walk in and you immediately feel this friendliness, this relaxed nature, even if you aren't necessarily their prime clientele. So with these sorts of characterful relations and characterful locations, you want to build the expectation of presence but unwanted. And then you play against tie-up in a neighbouring town by making it friendly. You know how to be friendly. You're a human being. You know what you like. Other characterful relations are or characterful locations are key farms, graveyards, and areas of bush. Whilst the pubs are getting this parochial, we are here, farms and farmers can represent pr- can represent pride in a way that is very hard to do outside of rural areas. Pride in history. How far back can these farmers go? Were they free settlers? Tasmania in particular, you may know this about all of Australia, but Tasmania in particular had a high convict population. I think it's over 50% of Australia's convicts came to Tasmania. So when we're dealing with farmers in these locations, we're not dealing with um, I don't quite get what you mean, Paradox. I'm an, I'm an American, but isn't there economic tourism? So those would be a pub. Yeah, sorry, mate. I don't quite understand what you mean by that sentence. Um, mm, in the case of pubs, they're like American bars, but they're different. They they have different relationships with the community, different vibes. You're not just going there to get drunk. You're often going there to get a cheap and a good feed. So I don't know if that answers what you're looking for there. Um, yeah. Yes, Tasmania has a heavy convict past. So many Irish criminals. Uh, ah, no workers. Yeah, lots of Irish people are in the area, and if you have an Irish name, that's generally a strong indicator that you were of convict stock. This also, this is Lily. She's not being super friendly to the camera today. Um, so were they free settlers or convicts? Because that will affect the pride. Fake tourists? No, no, we don't have that sort of relationship with pubs, particularly in rural areas. There are, touristy traps. One of Tasmania's big points of economy is tourism. But for the most part, pubs are communities and community focuses. Um, you go to the pub to get the gossip. You go to the pub to get um, to catch up with your mates. It's not a to make something that is gimmicky is not done in these sorts of rural areas around here. If you head down to Hobart, there are a few like that, and there are certainly conglomerates that own lots of pubs, but they're still run by a publican. They're still franchised out, so there isn't that sort of relationship. But this is Chronicles of Darkness. Who's to say that the uh, uh, oh, that's gross. Poor Alaska. Yeah, um, that's not the case down here. But this is Chronicles of Darkness, and this is an Australian Chronicles of Darkness with a setting that is anti-authoritarian. There's nothing stopping you from coming in and saying anything with the Oasis logo, which we changed for copyright reasons, um, is over um, uses Bunnings tactics, which may not make sense to you, because I don't know if that warehouse exists in the US. Basically, Bunnings is a warehouse business. I'm trying to think of a good relationship. Um, They sell building supplies and all that sort of stuff generally to the average consumer. But what they'll do is they'll come into an area and undercut themselves for a period of time to the point that the other hardware stores and that sort of thing can't compete. And so they go out of business. Then Bunnings jacks up their prices. Bunnings tactics are dirty economics, and they're just kind of evil. They're bad people. Oh, I'm sorry, sweetie. Home Depot, yeah, they're like Home Depot. Forcing mum and dad businesses out because they can. So you can do the same sort of thing with your pub. Anything with the Oasis logo. Let's change this. We've got a Greek mythology theme. What's a good one? We don't want to go Hydra. Yeah, it's dirty. Dirty, dirty tactics for Home Depots and Walmarts. What's a good logo? Let's go Medusa. So, in terms of the groups that we have active, we have the Bellathon Conspiracy going up against the Chimera Cult, playing into the story of mythology. But we're going to go with Medusa for the logo because it's got the same Pan? I'm going to keep that for later, but I like it. We'll definitely pull Pan into the setting. And if you are sitting in chat, if you're just chilling out, feel free to throw any ideas out. This is not just my creative endeavor. I'm trying to incorporate as many ideas from you guys as possible, and just to keep it sensible. And maybe this will go up on Storyteller's Vault at some point. I don't know. We'll just find out. Jumping to farms again. Key farms, pride in their history. One of the... Yes, hello kitten. One of the things that we have to ask with farms and farmers is, what is their relationship to the Aboriginal people? Aboriginal people. Through much of our history in Tassie, although the government was also pro-genocide, it was often the farmers who were the ones that were enacting the genocide of the Aboriginal people. It was just government that was left to clean up the mess. Libertarian dreams. So when we're looking at farms, how do they relate to the Aboriginal people? Do they, given the parochial and proud nature and mood of our setting? Ooh, this is where we may throw in Pan, actually. Do they reject calls for restitution and sovereignty? Or do they tokenize? Now, the reason that we're going for those two options is not a reflection on actual farmers in Australia. It's a reflection on the setting. If we want someone to be parochial, we need them to believe that their way is right, and we want them to be proud, because that means that they are right. They know they're right. Why would you question it? Honestly, this is the land that we have tilled for 200 years. It's ours. Key farms all across Tassie, they have a lot of land. Tasmania is about the size of Ireland, so you can sometimes get, parcels of land that are doled out that are the size of places like Luxembourg in Europe. In fact, let's take a look at that. Luxembourg land area is what we're after. 2,586 square kilometers in Luxembourg. So that's a bit hard to get, but it's not impossible in Tassie. So how do these farms relate to our setting? Now, this is all about reinforcing the mood that we're going for, and it makes the setting have this character. How are we going to break it? You can go down gender lines actually really easily for this. Male presenting, reinforcing, female presenting, not reinforcing. However, I think last time we met, chatting about this, Australia has a different relationship to masculine and feminine. For Australia, the masculine energy is much more chaotic and in tune with the wild. The feminine energy is much more um, based around cities and creating order. So, this is reinforced by mothers, grandmothers, and nursery rhymes. And this is where we can add Pan into the mix. I love the idea Paradox Talks. An indigenous freedom group similar to Basque terror groups that rose up against Franco. I love the idea. I'm 100% European stock, so I'm a little hesitant to write that, simply because I'm a white boy, and I don't want to misrepresent that. But I like it. How can we work that in? Many indigenous farm hands. So this is where we can work this idea in, and I like it for this reason. The farm hands and the farm workers are those with the indigenous um, bloodline, and so they are. Excuse me. Very offensive music. Um, uh, Bringing their stories and bringing a call to freedom, a call to action. Um, Most aggressive, financed by more established mainland groups. There we go. I think so. Whilst there is this pride in history, this pride in history is also mirrored by the indigenous farmhands who are trying to reconnect to their culture. We'll keep it as real world as possible for those guys because fiction isn't as terrifying. And so they're a corrupting influence. They're kind of chaotic. Um, their organisation is known as Pan. There we go. Weaving for the madness the wild and the rejection that they've sustained. Cool. So we have this internal conflict going on in the farming community of this area, which is something that our hunters can interact with and should interact with. Maybe they've got family from these key farms, or maybe they regularly visit a specific pub, but their response to how these things go about, acted upon and go about, change the nature of the story that's going on. Graveyards. Alright. Tassie's relationship to death is weird. We have a lot of graveyards, convict era graveyards, that were dug up and then were transformed, particularly in cities, into parks. So if you look at... it's not Franklin Square. What the hell is it? Parks, Hobart. St David's Park and St Andrew's Park in Hobart, they were once cemeteries. Graveyards need to have a theme that for them as well. And a simple choice is, do they play to type in terms of are they well maintained? Are those who are seen as bad people memorialized? In our setting, we have William Gibson as the father of the Chimera cult. That's why many of them were very Presbyterian graveyards as well. Church of Scotland graveyards are great for turning into parks. Graveyards also, thematically, they represent decay and the change of state from living to dead and that sort of thing. It's a transitional and liminal space. Instead of making it transitional and liminal, make it like it's not something that you pass through. It's something you enter into and take with you. That adds to a characterful graveyard. What are they when entering? What are you entering? What conditions represent gain in the graveyard? When leaving, what do you take with you? Thanks very much, Paradox Talks. I appreciate you jumping into chat. Have a great time at work. So graveyards represent this liminal space, but instead of making it liminal, make it something that sticks. And it makes death real to the people around you. When we're thinking of graveyards in fiction, I'm just trying to think of a good one. I'm on. Apparently, the Farscape brain rot has set in. Graveyards, like the Leviathan burial space, are places that you go to deposit something, but a change takes place. In one particular episode of Farscape, Gianna believes her brother has died. This um, very childlike character, but with very drastic trauma, believes that her brother's died. So she goes into mourning, she lands on a grave world, and she just starts behaving recklessly. Coming out the other side, she is more focused, and there's a transition in her character. How you do that in your games, I think, is very important. For our last 10 or so minutes, the bush. This is where you can start playing into mysterious places with Hunter. Um, you can use nests, which are settings of confrontations with monsters. Where are the nests of monsters? In this sort of setting, we do want the bush to have an antagonistic feel to it. That you are not welcome. That it is not right for you to be here. And nests are a great way to utilize that. Um, the book has its own selection, and they make it very human places. The Theatre Royal, a ship graveyard. We don't want that. We don't want that relationship. So, the Banksia Grove. Banksias tend to grow in more dry environments, generally by the sea. If we're looking at where we are in Tasmania, this is a very well watered place. The Banksia Grove has no sound. Birds fly through, but they do not call. The land, the earth, is covered by a thick bed of Banksia needles. Here, what do we want in this area? What sort of monster fits well and has a vaguely Greek counterpart? A Manticore. Manticore. That's an idea. Here is the Manticore. A creature made of scorpion tails, wombat body, and kangaroo legs. Actually, that's kind of spooky. I'm going to use that. I'm definitely going to build that. Here it sits and watches and waits for prey. A bushwalker off the trail. A wallaby too far from home. A deer hungry. A dog hunting. It's important to note how the words that you're going to treat that sort of setting with. If you treat the hunters as bushwalkers, there's a curiosity here. You can play into that curiosity and alter it in some way. A wallaby too far from home. prey animal. They are being hunted, probably even toyed with. A deer hungry, something coming in that is skittish and afraid, or a dog hunting, something that is beneath them but is still dangerous. These sorts of words you can use to apply tilts. Or conditions. So if they're a bushwalker, we want the spooked condition. Wallaby, shaken, deer, um, deprived, and dog, a hunting dog. Let's take a look at some of our conditions. Spooked, shaken, obsession, notoriety. Connected, bonded. No. Oh, I don't have any good base conditions for this. We'll think of something later. So, we have those tilts. We also have general tilts of let's take a look at what the Hunter book has. Tilts. Detritus. Walking across Banksia needles is a pain in the neck. They're slippery. You just misplace your footing and you're on your back. That's perfect. And we want... we want extreme heat, maybe. Yeah, we want extreme heat. Something that they wouldn't... that is unexpected when they come in. Just picked up some werewolf condition cards because I really think the dog one needs something. Paranoid. Perfect. All of these generate a character for this location. It is antagonistic. It is messy. It is hot. This Banksia Grove is a threat. Just straight up a threat that the party has to navigate. It's a nest of this Manticore, which I'm going to build because after this stream because it looks fun. What about a tainted place? Tainted places are those that are filled with something bad. We'll go back up to the start of this chapter. They're wrong. They're twisted. They're cruel. There's something about them that is bad. Now, tainted places have their own subsystems. That's fine. We can fill them out at a later point. But what do we want as a tainted place? The rabbit warrens. Actually, no, the deer trails. Around Longford and Perth area, there was a deer farm that uh, the deer were all let loose. That's a great way to have a small, ever-present threat. So for this, we think of the deer farm as a um, tainted place. We'll set this to potency 3, just to represent a reasonably large area. Dread powers. Deer farm was let to run wild and twisted and broken fenced. Sometimes the fences just keep things out. Things in. These fences kept others out. Now the deer are wrong. Their meat is filled with boils and cysts and pain. This land welcomes none but those it deems worthy. It loves none but those who spill blood. A tainted place. Potency 3, dread powers, we get 7 of them. It's got its own, they've got their own little things. Dread powers are the powers that are dreadful. And we've just hit 9 o'clock, so I'll wrap this up now. These are the things that are the supernatural powers that exist in this place. Ordinarily, they're used by actual entities, but tainted places, well, they've got their own. There are suggestions in the book, that sort of thing. But for tonight, or this morning, we're going to pause. It's been lovely to have you with us as we look at Hunter the Vigil and how to use some of its systems to tell a story and how to use the setting well. As always, with any Chronicles of Darkness product or any other products, we have a Trinity Aether Kickstarter, I believe, still going. Feel free to look that up. We have a heap of stuff going on with Gen Con, and you can tune in to select stuff. I believe the best way to find it is through the Onyx Path webpage or through the Discord. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Stay safe in this world of darkness.